Hey everybody, we're back with Deep Images. We are still talking about strange love stories, and we have a lot of surprises coming in this series. With me tonight is my co-hosts Justin Cotton and CF Roberts, and our eternal panelist Bill Mulligan, and our very special guest panelist Tanya Atomic. And I'm glad all of y'all are here. We've been having a blast so far. Now the kind of gavel went into my hand. So I'm going to talk about a movie that I think is really in the plot alone one of the most extreme love stories that's ever been attempted in fiction and much imitated. Um, so this is called Orphée or Orpheus by Jean Cocteau in 1950, and it is really one of the most sublime films I've ever seen. I can and have watched it over and over. I watched it at least 6 or 7 times this week, and part of it is I'm trying to memorize so much of the wonderful dialogue and poetry and aphorisms that are in it because Cocteau he was a genius. He was like Nabokov level with words. He was just amazing, underrated too. I think for that, as far as the dialogue, the actual prose, I think that's what's really incredible. But moreover, he also uses a lot of special effects that were either ahead of their time or there's stuff that was kind of easy to do that he cobbled together, but a lot of them were photographic tricks. No one had ever thought to do them, or no one had ever thought to do them seriously within a plot. But since it's a fantasy movie, those elements work. So it's one of those movies that's definitely fantasy, but and it does have special effects, but it also has elements that you have to use your imagination uh, to conjure a fantastic landscape, kind of like in Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville. There's not much special effects in Alphaville, but in your mind, you know that Lemmy Caution is going to this other dimension to fight this dastardly bastard played by Howard Vernon. And there's a robot that controls everything. It's really just a light blinking. It's probably all you could afford, and it's brilliant. So this is similar, in its way to it. Predecessor, I think Godard was into Cocteau, but so yeah, it's about the Orpheus and Eurydice Greek myth, and I read it when I was a kid. I read a lot of Greek mythology. I'm kind of a mythology maniac, and shout out to all our and uh, Orpheus and Eurydice. It's similar in its consequence to the biblical story of Lot and his wife. And something happens, and the angel or the being, extraterrestrial being from another dimension, tells Lot, or in this case Orphe, not to look back because your wife will poof. And so scholars can argue over who recorded which version first, but it's the same kind of archetypal idea. In this one, he's an updated. It's very cutting edge for its time. I mean, no American movie would look like this. This is set in a community of beatniks and bohemians, and it looks like 30, 40 years ahead of its time. I mean, it's just like when I first saw it, I was kind of staggered by it. And I was like, wow, America really, really takes a long time to catch up with the rest of the world, man. And so they're hanging out, and Orpheus in this incarnation is a world famous poet. He's become like a superstar, a hero. Which that the idea of a poet becoming a superstar, rock star character is kind of unlikely. I know there have been some that have verged on it for sure, but it's interesting that Cocteau chose to make him that. And so the public has a love hate relationship with him, and Eurydice is his wife, and basically they're at a cafe, and there's this drunken poet named Jacques Segeste who's kind of the I don't know what you call it, a MacGuffin. I don't know. He's kind of like a plot device upon which a lot of things hinge, and he's drunk and he's beating people, and then these motorcyclists come by and knock him down, and he's dead. And so they're calling the police, but then a black limousine comes up with a lady called the Princess, and she and her retinue load Segeste into the car, and Orpheus protests, and then he comes along. So he's kind of like, those motorcyclists killed him, but you're part of your motorcade. So what's up? And it's they go to the princess's domain, She has an assistant named Huertabes, and he's a very obedient, cool guy. He's a long dead being also, and he's her confidant. And what has ensued is that um, they are not going to really tell him much about what they really are up to. So there's a period where he starts to get particularly surly, and then boom, and then he wakes up on a beach, and his own reflection is on the sand. And so he just goes back home and hangs with his wife some more, who's gotten pregnant. Uh, Finally, he has access to the car that the princess took them to the place, and the car is spouting this poetry, these insane, incredible, brilliant lines. And he's like, one of these lines is greater than my entire canon. And then his wife is like, you and that radio, we could be dead and you wouldn't notice. And he's like, we were dead and didn't notice. And it's amazing. But what it turns out to be, it is Segeste has been taken by the princess, and she is death incarnate. And so Segeste's poetry, he's reading it, and it's transmitting through this car they left behind. So, that on the face of it is kind of absurd, but Orpheus is obsessed with writing down all the stuff, because he can't believe that, oh my God, this is the best, better than anything I do. So he kind of screws up in a bunch of ways doing this with his hubris. And one is ignoring his wife, and Death chooses to send one of their motorcyclists to knock her down, and she's dead. So here's where you get the actual Greek myth of Orpheus going to the underworld to rescue her. And this part is heavy on special effects. I mean, if you've seen Beauty and the Beast by Cocteau, you know that he's brilliant at this kind of tableau. But this is like, to me, even though it's not as ornate and filigreed and period piece as Beauty and the Beast, to me it's really like heavy special effects, but ideas and the way they're pulled off. So he tells them, the way to death is through a mirror. Every day we look in the mirror for years and we see death at work upon us. And so he puts on these rubber gloves, and the rubber gloves, so he films a lot of things backwards. So, I mean, he'll film them backwards and then he'll run them forwards. So it looks like they'll just magically happen. I mean, it's like the most simple effect, but it's amazing. So when these gloves come on, it's just like very weird. I mean, and he put his hands through the mirror, and he's like, I can't go through the mirror, and the mirror parts. It's like water, and so they walk through it, and it's amazing. And as they're in the underworld, Ertebise is guiding him, and the actor Jacques Perle or whatever, he's standing still, but the backdrop behind him is Orpheus running to catch up with him, and his figure is bobbing. Now that shot is used a lot now, and a movie I reviewed on here recently, Naja, used the exact same kind of shot and said, "Hurry, the dead travel fast." So it's like, how can this guy who's just kind of motionless be faster than this guy running behind him? Because he's dead, uh, you know. So they get to the gist of it, and he wants to get Eurydice back, but what has happened in the middle of all this is that Death has realized that she loves Orpheus. His words have like wooed her from beyond, and she's finally going to tell him. This is like a really kind of surprise right here in the middle of him trying to rescue his pregnant wife from death. But she doesn't come off as evil. She's part of a mechanism that just kind of has to be. She answers to this boardroom of like four guys in suits on a plain wooden table, but I mean the things they say are like these absolute cosmic verities that cannot be, that even death itself cannot transgress against. And so they ask Death, do you love this man Orpheus? And she's smoking like a fiend, and of course, and then back then that was just casual. It's just funny how much she's smoking, but she's already death. So, and she puffs her smoke, and she's like, "We, we," and then Ertebise has to admit that he's kind of fallen in love with Orpheus's now dead wife Eurydice. So they're really in a pickle. So these authoritarian, pragmatic beings that I guess run the entirety of reality. Uh, they're bemused by these little love story soap operas popping up because they went to Earth, and they're not real happy about them. I mean, they're a little bemused, but they're also a little annoyed and hangry. So they go ahead and send Orpheus and Eurydice back, but the condition is that Orpheus can never turn his back and look at her, or she will fade away forever. And so it gets into a ridiculous, and they send over to Beast to guide him, which is a ploy, of course. They know that he loves her too, but like what the hell? So he's there, and he's constantly trying to get her to not get him to turn around, so she'll disappear, and they have to even avoid mirrors. Meanwhile, he's back in this car, and he still hasn't figured this car thing out. He's getting these poetic phrases again. He still hasn't figured out that the man who's saying them is Segest, who was hanging around when he was in the realm of death. And Eurydice comes back, yes, and he's with her in the car, and finally, just he looks in the mirror, and she's gone. So it's like, and he tells her to be, well, this was bound to happen. I couldn't go on like this forever. So, he's very selfish and he's very arrogant. I like him, but he has these qualities. There's a gaggle of bohemians, poets, failed beatnik writers who have resented him for some time. And what they have found is a manuscript left behind by Segest. And they have found out that those phrases that are spoken through the car are his. And so they accuse him of, well, not him directly, they accuse people who they want to bring him to justice as a plagiarizer. And they believe he had something to do with Segest's death. And even they had no evidence. And they want to find out what's going on. And there's a group called the Bacchantes who correspond to the Bacchanal in the actual myth. And they're in the actual myth, they're the women that tear him to shreds. So in this one, they're feminists. So this is 1950 France, and the leader pretty much dresses and has the same haircut as Tourist Satana and Faster Pussycat 16 years later. So, and she's played by Juliet Greco, a yay pop singer. And she's very mean. But she lies with the Bohemians, and they just decide, they're going to grab him like a angry mob out of his own house and take him to the authorities. Like all these weirdos and outcasts, allegedly, are going to take this poet and like make him pay for stuff that they have no evidence for. And who knows what that is commenting on? Are they insanely jealous? Are they crazy? Is the Juliet Greco character a misandrist? Who knows? But it becomes moot because he gets accidentally shot by one of them's gun. No, actually, it's a gun that Artabees has to protect him. But one of those guys knocks into him, one of the Bohemians, and Orpheus is shot dead. So that's a moot issue. Eurydice's gone. Orpheus is dead. This time, though, see, he's happy he's dead because now he gets to go and be with Death. And so they have another journey. This one has more crazy special effects. And they finally get to kind of the heart of it. And, she has vowed, Death has vowed to him she's never going to leave him. Then she asks him, it's kind of like they get to this place where a crossroads, and Orpheus is like, well, where do we go next? Where do we go to sneak off together and be together forever? And she's like, do you love me enough to obey me, to do anything I want, no matter what I force you to do? And he's like, yes. And so he makes Segest and Eurydice hold Orpheus and he knock him where he's kind of mildly unconscious. And here again is where you had the fantasy element, though there's no actual effects. And basically, Death concentrates, and Orpheus concentrates, and she's like, "It's coming faster now," and it's kind of like a telepath, like Professor X or something. And basically, their energy is sending everything back into time. So now Orpheus and Eurydice are going back through the journey backwards from the underworld, back up to to Earth in the past, and not recent past. And Eurydice's alive, pregnant, and they're all happy dory apparently, and they don't remember any of it. And Eurydice and Death are left with this thing that, well, okay, now they've really done it. Like this is worse than the fact she's in love with a mortal, because she's like warped reality to get in this situation. And so they're taken away. It's implied that, yeah, even Death may die. Isn't that Lovecraft? But I loved it. I still love it. I saw it in 1993 for the first time, and I was just first of all, I was fascinated with Jean Cocteau because didn't know who the Cocteau twins were named after until somebody told me about him. And I don't know, that was just one. And people were like, you should see Beauty and the Beast, and I'm like, well, yeah, I will, but let me watch this one first. So I got Orpheus, and I don't know, I feel like the love angle is super powerful. I feel like the scenes with Jean Marais as Orpheus and Maria Casares as Death are some of the most potent kind of doomed longing romances that I've ever seen on screen, and I think it's just amazing. So that's Orphe. So has anyone else seen this or like it or care? I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'm a huge Cocteau fan.
I thought
But
so.
I saw most of his films like years and years ago.
Okay.
So I don't remember a lot about this one.
Hmm.
But I feel like I don't want to talk too much about myself, but my two greatest influences, which I feel like people wouldn't guess, are Cocteau and Mario Bava.
No, I
But
think that's great.
Oh.
Wonderful. Two wonderful choices.
That's the kind of talking about yourself we like to do on the channel.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, Bava is this guy Bill's favorite, right? Director.
Absolutely.
He's in my
Favorite
top
director.
10 easily. I mean, maybe my top 5. Game
Can I
changer.
just ask, what was the year of that film, Henry?
1950.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
That's what's so remarkable
An
about
old
it.
one. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just incredible. So you haven't seen it yet, Chuck?
No,
You got to
I
get it. I'm sure Heather has it.
haven't seen it. Didn't even know there was. Didn't even know it existed. Actually,
Oh, okay. But have you seen his Beauty and the Beast by any chance, or know of it?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome too. But
yeah, it looks
all
great.
right, well, guys, we're gonna wrap up and come back. We're gonna come back with some more strange love stories. Justin, could you help me impart some wisdom to the audience?
Well, thanks again so much for watching. It's great that you do so. Don't forget, please, to like and subscribe to the channel for more great videos, and leave a comment if you're so inclined. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. Hey everybody, we're back with Deep Images, and we are still talking about those strange love stories. We have covered some really wild ones, and we're going to cover a lot more unexpected ones. I'm with Briggie Williams, veteran panelist, and my co-host CF Roberts, and I'm Henry Covert. And so we're going to do one today. We're going to let Briggie bring us one. That should be interesting.
Okay, yeah. So today's movie I'm going to bring to everyone is called Being There. It was filmed in 1979, but it was adapted from a book written in 1971. The author is Yuri, excuse me,
It's like Jersey, isn't it?
Kaczynski. Yeah, Yuri Kaczynski.
Oh, okay.
So it was adapted from his book, Being There. It stars Peter Sellers and Shirley MacLaine is in it. Jack Warden is in it. A lot of good veteran actors are in this film. This movie starts out just to give you an overview, and then we'll go into why I chose the movie. It seems like an unusual movie. It doesn't seem like it would be a strange love story, but in fact, the entire movie, in my opinion, is a strange love story. So it starts out with Peter Sellers, who's it opens up where he's like in bed. He's in this very palatial home, and there's a maid there, and it's owned by apparently a very well-off gentleman who dies. We never really get to see him. We don't know much about him other than the fact that he's well off. And Peter Sellers is the person that was raised there and tends to the garden. And there are these beautiful gardens. The place is very well manicured, very well taken care of. But when this gentleman dies, um, and people come to basically take over the estate, Peter Sellers is left there. But unbeknownst to the people who have now come, the lawyers, to say, okay, this estate has been sold, Peter Sellers' character, whose name is Chauncey, has nowhere to go. Actually, they said that he has to leave.
Right.
So he decides, okay, I'm going to just pack up everything that I have, which is basically the clothes that the deceased gentleman gave him to wear.
Oh,
And
wow.
so he goes out into the streets. But here's the thing, when he leaves the walls behind this beautiful palatial estate, it opens up onto a level of humanity that he's never seen before because he's never left those walls. He's
Mm.
never been outside of those walls. He knows nothing about the
He's not
real world.
socialized.
He is not socialized. He is, thank you, very much so. He's not socialized. The only thing that he knows, basically, of the world is from watching television. And
He's in
that's what he
trouble.
did.
No, I'm kidding.
And here's the thing, they never talk about really how he got there. It was that this elderly gentleman raised him. So now here he is, a middle-aged man, and he's never left the walls of this beautiful place. And he just loved taking care of the gardens. He loved beauty, and he enjoyed just harmonizing with nature. And that was his thing. But he
Mhm.
also would just watch television. So that's where he got all of his information about the world and everything around him, which I think is absolutely amazing. So when he leaves this place, he's dressed in these 1930s clothes.
Mm.
And he steps out into a world, juxtapose the backdrop. Imagine the South Bronx, like in the 70s, 80s, completely kind of bombed out, abandoned buildings, people sitting around warming themselves by like
Yeah.
trash cans and
Mhm.
a lot of hustle and bustle, bodegas everywhere. And here he is, this man with this walking stick and very well put together, very dapper, wearing a hat, spats, the whole nine yards. So he doesn't really, he's just looking around at this environment, and it's pretty, I guess, not so much shocking, but more of a wonderment to him because understand if he's been behind these walls, his mind is kind of like a child in many ways.
Yeah.
I want to say in many ways, I want to say it is like a child. So he has this childlike wonderment, which means that he doesn't have the natural defense mechanisms that most of us would have if we found ourselves in a situation like that. He
Mhm.
has none of that. He is pure, he is open. And there is something really beautiful, innocent, and magical about the fact that he doesn't have any of these defenses. So, but when he leaves, he also takes his remote control with him, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
That he thought he could use this remote control for any television. So as he's
Nowadays you
walking,
can. But
nowadays you can, yeah. But also, this film takes place in Washington, Washington D.C.,
okay.
and that's relevant as we go further into the movie. So as he's walking through this town, he leaves from that section of town and finds himself into a more, I would say, business, residential, moving into a business area where there's stores and shops. And as he walks by one of the shops, there's a television. Oh, and he saw this television. He thought it was amazing. But here was the thing. He saw himself in the television in the shop window and was kind of like, whoa, like, look at me. Like he was very like a child in a mirror, like,
Mm.
ooh, that sort of thing.
Does he know
And
he
as
has
he
to
was
buy
doing,
it?
I'm sorry, what?
Does he know he has to buy it? If
That
he
he,
wants
I don't think so. I don't think so.
okay.
So as he's looking at himself, he backs up and he steps off the curb. And when he stepped off the curb, there was a car backing up, and the car like crushed his leg or it bruised his leg.
Wow.
And so when that happened, um, little do we know, but that was the car that Shirley MacLaine was in, and that is how they meet. They are both in the movie, as I said, but um, she was concerned for him. Come to find out that she is the wife of a very well-off, well-connected um, political political figure. And because of that, she insists on taking him to the hospital. But because of what that might mean, the implications, because of who she is as a public figure, she says, you know what? We're not going to take you to the hospital. We're going to take you back to my place. So they take this man back to their place, which is uh, sprawling, very high end. But while they're in the car, she asks him what his name is, and but he was also thirsty, so she gave him a drink, not knowing when he wanted a drink, he didn't. He was really asking for water, but she gave him like vodka, something he's never tasted before. So as
Wow.
he's drinking this, he's choking, and she says, "Well, what's your name?" And he says, "Chauncey," and he goes, "Oh, okay." And she was asking him his last name, but perhaps in all of that, he didn't know what she said, but he said Gardner, which is, oh, your name is Chauncey Gardner. Oh, okay,
Right.
fine. So, Mr.
Yeah.
Gardner, you know, I'm going to take you back to my place. My husband will take care of you. My husband is ailing because her husband was dying. So, was ailing. So, um, so they go back, and the doctor looks at him, takes, makes sure that he's okay. Um, but so now that I've given you the setup, here's where the kind of love story for me comes in. Because of who this man is, because of how he lived, because of his entire life being informed by television, and being a actual gardener, he sees the world through the lens of gardening. He has no understanding of a deeper conversation. So his answers are very one note or very I would say not very intellectual, very simplified, very stripped down.
Mhm.
And in a world like Washington, a very simple, stripped down answer seems like a revelation. And because of the way because of the way he comes across, people are very drawn to him. And so for me, where the love story comes in for me is it is about love and it is about what people project onto other people, what you see in them, what you want to see in them.
Mhm.
And that's how most of us are when we find someone that we love. We project our emotions, we project our hopes and dreams into them. And so Chauncey Gardner, because he has a very stripped down understanding of the world, he has very childlike answers. So, for instance, he in this in this in all that's going on in this movie, he gets a chance to meet the president, the home that he is now staying at because of the accident that happened earlier.
Right.
This gentleman is an advisor to the president, and the president is coming to visit. And because of that, because of their interaction earlier, the dying man who's Shirley MacLaine's husband, whose name, by the way, which I think is really amazing. So he's a gardener, and her name is Eve. So I thought that was really very interesting that they
Yeah.
created
Wow.
that,
Yeah.
I
right?
didn't
So
even
they,
pick up on that.
No.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thought that was really very clever. So the husband was so taken with Chauncey, he says, "You know what? The president is coming. I want you to sit in with me. He's gonna the nation is going through a really bad financial time, and he's coming to just get some advice from me." Excuse me. So the president comes in, Chauncey is there. They asked some questions, like, "What do you do here?" Like the president's asking, and he's like, "What do you think about the country?" And so then Chauncey says, "Well, the country is like a garden," or he said, "It's like a garden. You have seasons, and there are seasons when things are good and things are growing and things are dying, but then spring comes and things bloom and then they're beautiful." But he's really speaking about a garden, and these
Right.
people interpret what he is saying, which I just interpret what he is saying as something deeper than what it is.
Right.
Again, projecting their dreams, hopes, and understanding about the world
Hmm.
onto a man who was really basically a simpleton.
Right.
He really, so that happens. So later that
Sorry.
evening, after the president leaves, actually a day or two or so, he's giving a statement to the nation, and he quotes this man talking about how we are all flowers in a garden, and there are times where things wither, and but
Oh
things come
God.
back in the summer and the spring, and everyone is just so full of hope and optimism because no one's ever heard anybody speak so forthrightly. So this is what they're saying. So now um, magazines are calling up and they want to interview this Chauncey person, and the vice president was supposed to appear on a show like the equivalent of like the Tonight Show or something like this, and couldn't make it. So they said we should get this guy on and let him talk to the country. Why
Instead of Walter
not?
Mondale. Oh.
Why not? So they get him on there, and and he wins the country over, and people are just so then they would show shots of people at home going like, he's so brilliant, I can't believe it, women are hot for him, it's just like out of control. Meanwhile, he has like the mentality of like a, I don't know, 5 or 6 year old or 7 year old, this sort of thing. Again, projecting their hopes, their love, dreams, but then the Shirley MacLaine character um, really becomes very attracted to him because, let's face it, women are attracted to power. So she becomes very attracted to him and finds a way to get into his bedroom while he's sitting on the edge of the bed doing what else? Watching television because
We're in the
that's what
same
he
house.
does. Yeah, they're in the same house. So she gets to his bedroom and they start talking. And on the television, there's like some show on where there's a romantic couple, they're kissing. And since he has no insight into how to make love to a woman, what a woman would want, um, uh, Shirley MacLaine, the Eve character, just sort of grabs him, starts, holding him. And so he's mimicking what he sees these people on television doing. And so he starts to kiss her back, and it gets very steamy and hot. And then when it goes to commercial, he just stops. And she's like, whoa, like what happened? And she's like, did I do something wrong? Like, what's going on? Like, is there a problem? And he just says to her, well, I like to watch. And what he's talking about is watching television. So
Yeah.
she's like,
Classic line.
oh, okay, you like to watch. And she's like, well, okay. And so she proceeds to she proceeds to pleasure herself while he sits on the edge of the bed and watches television. And then he clicks onto something like, I don't know, like some type of yoga class. So while she's on the floor and underneath the bed and she's pleasuring herself, he's doing yoga, and it gets really wild. Um, but well, her husband is rather old. He has a rare disease, and he's like in his, I guess, in his 80s. But the husband realized that she was attracted to him and was like, I understand you're attracted to him. And that's originally why she even went to his room. But she has this sort of mind-blowing, monumental orgasm, and attributes that orgasm to him and how amazing he was, even though he was just
His presence just
he was looking at television. Sorry, doing yoga.
wow. I need to meet a woman who's that easily turned on.
Well, if you got that kind of power, I guess you can get that kind of orgasm.
Miami so.
So, so she's very taken with him in that regard. But to sort of backtrack, while he was on television, there were the people who saw him and knew him when he was like in this cloistered away in this home, who worked there, and they were like, "Wait a minute, this guy is now with the president. Like, how did that happen?" And they
They're
knew
just
who he
jealous.
really,
Yeah.
but they were just like, "Wow, only in America," like that sort of thing. Really, right? I mean, Stranger Things. But just to sort of put a button on this, because I believe I've sort of teased it enough where I feel you need to go and watch this movie. Why? Because as the movie progresses, he meets like the Russian ambassador, and the Russian ambassador believes that he speaks Russian, and he really doesn't, but somehow this movie really is all about projection.
So he's a mimic,
And
right, too?
he's not really able to mimic anyone because he's just being himself throughout the entire movie. So whoever he encounters, they project onto him like, oh, you're a man of few words, which means you must be very stoic and you must have a lot of knowledge and insight because you don't speak very much. No, he has a limited vocabulary and he does not say much at all. So he may give
Wow.
you a two-word answer, but people will interpret that two-word answer as being a man that will not be pushed or won't be rushed into a business deal. So they project they want onto him, and then with that, this mystique begins to grow, and the larger the mystique, the more power people want to hand him. So much so that at the end of the movie, they're considering him for president. So that's how much mystique has
Third.
has been, or they have sort of thrusted all of this onto him. And then the very, very end of the movie, which you must watch, I won't tell you, but something absolutely miraculous happens. Mind blowing and miraculous happens at the end of this movie that you did not see coming.
Yeah.
And we won't say what it is.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I only saw it once, quite a
Yeah,
while.
but I'm not going to say what it is, and I'm not, and it's not a tease where it's like, really, that was it. No, no, no. I did not expect this.
It's
Um,
magnificent.
yeah, at the end, it's amazing. What they were able to pull just from the book itself, I thought was pretty amazing. But the book is an amazing read.
Hmm.
But I would say they did a pretty good job with the movie. The acting is stellar. So let me tell you. So Peter Sellers, if you don't know who he is well known for playing the Pink Panther. If those people who may not know, he was also in Doctor Strangelove. He was also in Lolita. He was also in what
The
else was
fiendish
he
plot of
in?
Dr. Fu Manchu. Don't forget that
Fu
one.
Manchu. Oh my goodness, yes. And he was also in Clue. Remember that movie
Yeah,
Clue?
Clue. Yeah.
It was Clue. It wasn't Clue. It was like it was with like Peter Falk, and it was like a murder mystery type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he was also in that. That's also an excellent movie. And Shirley MacLaine was in Sweet Charity. She was in The Children's Hour. Oh my gosh, what else was she in? Around the
And
World in
she's
80
Warren Beatty's
Days.
sister, by the way.
Yeah, Warren Beatty's
Yeah.
sister. Right, exactly. So, which is kind of interesting since we were talking about Bonnie and Clyde earlier. So
Right.
there's like that sort of crossover. So the end of the movie is really good. And then I would also suggest, very highly suggest, that when the movie's over, look at the credits. The credits are amazing. So there are two little teasers in there that will keep you very intrigued. The credits I thought were hysterical, and I think you would really enjoy that. So that's my love story. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it certainly is because to me, we all, when we fall in love with someone, we are usually projecting our feelings onto other people just to find out that, who we were really falling in love with was ourselves. So
Yeah.
that's my message for you today, kids. Love yourselves.
Well said. Well stated. Man, that's cool. I'll have to
Yeah.
dig that out and watch it again. Well, I guess we're going to wrap up this episode, and we're going to be recording some more sessions on this topic, strange love stories. It'll be a little while for us, but by the time these get to you, it probably won't be that much time in between. So remember to like and subscribe, and share with your friends or people you know, and leave comments if you want to about what we're doing.
Yeah, let me know how you feel about being there because I'm really excited to hear other people's feedback regarding the film. It's about a 2 hour movie, and the characters are really, really super developed. So this is something that you may want to just sit down on like a Friday or a Saturday night and sink your teeth into some Peter Sellers and some Shirley MacLaine.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, audience. We love you, and we'll be back
Bye.
soon. Have a great evening.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.